hands up by democracy. TTIP, hands up by democracy. TTIP.
Democracy.
TTIP. TTIP. We are here today to
Okay.
We are delivering a message to the people inside this building, expressing our desire to have some form of citizen parliament against trade agreements that are being delivered in the future. But the next time these trade agreements get made public, huge protests arises all over the world, which is why they kept secret.
Everyone gather around the front entrance.
Okay. And yeah, they're calling in more security, it seems.
While the people inside this building either decide to adjourn the federal government or to actually participate in the democratic process, we're going to have a teach out for people that learn about the trade agreements that are going to affect their lives and also have their own say in what's happening. Who knows? Maybe the people inside will be inspired by our fantastic work. Okay, everybody. I want to introduce you to someone who's been a fundamental contributor to the global justice movement, trying to win democratic transparency around these trade agreements. Someone who knows more than just about anyone on the scene, who's been a vital ally for all these movements trying to seek justice. Her name is Kaucher, and she's going to talk about the technicalities of these agreements and what they mean for us. Please give her a big round of applause and a welcome.
Before I talk about the trade agreements, I might talk about what's happening between us and them inside today. Yesterday I emailed Vince Cable's Secretary of State for Business and also Lord Livingston, who's the Trade Minister. They both have offices in here. So I emailed them and asked them to come out and speak to us. This morning I spoke to the Deputy Head of the International Unit, and those emails have gone across pretty quickly to here.
Can you put it right up to the next window?
Right. Shall I start again?
Yeah, please, why not?
Yeah. Okay, I'll start again. Right, before I talk about the actual trade agreements, I'll talk about what's going on today between us and the people inside. So yesterday afternoon, I emailed Vince Cable, who is the Secretary of State for Business, and Lord Livingston, who's the Trade Minister, asking them to come out and meet us today. Those emails have gone across very quickly to the people in here, because when I spoke to these people at 11 o'clock, they were fully aware of it and quite worried by the sound of it. So we've also asked 3 of the bureaucrats in here to come out too. Lord Livingston is not here, and they can't tell us where he is because of security reasons, and that's no wonder for security reasons, because this is a letter that was from me in the Morning Star this week, talking about how Lord Livingston lied to the European Scrutiny Committee of the Commons. So he's not here now, and we can't know where he is for security reasons. Cable, they couldn't tell me where Cable was. The head of, I was told, that the head of the international unit, who was alongside Longford when he lied to the Livingston when he lied to the committee, apparently is also not here. I did talk to Paul Griffiths, who's the deputy head, and he told me this was not an appropriate forum for them to speak to us, so we should be around a table somewhere. They do have meetings between the public, well, NGOs, and the people inside who do the negotiating on these trade deals. But I bet none of you knew those meetings existed. So they're not exactly public and open. And what's more, there's a separate meeting on these trade agreements between the negotiators and business. So it's two separate meetings between NGOs and the negotiators and business and the negotiators. Even the European Commission doesn't separate like that. So I made the point that this is exceptional circumstances because the CETA is being signed up really quickly. And this is the sort of exceptional circumstances where they should be out here talking to us. So we've just delivered 5 letters to those 2 politicians and to those 3 bureaucrats. That's the head of the international unit, transatlantic and international unit, the deputy head, and the person, Gillian Clive, who deals with investment. And it's investment that we're really concerned about today. So what we're here for today is that the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, the EU-US Free Trade Agreement, will contain investor-state dispute settlement, which allows corporations to sue governments for any regulation that they don't like. For instance, taking the NHS back into public hands, or taking British Rail back into public hands. We would be sued by corporations for that. So you can see that that prevents any of the measures that we actually want, and is a big threat to democracy, to lawmaking, and to the public purse as well. Concern about this element of being sued by corporations, it's called Investor-State Dispute Settlement, ISDS. The concern was so great, even amongst governments like the German government, the French government, amongst huge German unions, amongst unions here, as was shown in the TUC conference this week. Concern was so high that they held a 3-month consultation on ISDS in the US-EU Free Trade Agreement, TTIP. That closed in July. We found out that 150,000 people put in responses calling for no ISDS, and 50,000, 1/3 of them came from this country. The actual analysis of that, and you wouldn't think it was that hard to analyse, will not be out until November from the Commission. It doesn't take much analysis that 150,000 people don't want ISDS in TTIP. But in the meantime, the slimiest, dirtiest trick of all is that they're slipping through the Canada-EU Free Trade Agreement, which is called CETA. That stands for Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. They've been negotiating that for a bit. It's been like wobbling around, not signed up. Suddenly, they're going to finalise it on the 25th of September. And it contains ISDS. But the analysis of our responses to the consultation on ISDS and TTIP won't be out till November. So just how dirty is that? So that's why we're here today, because of this very fast sign-up, or some sort of sign-up, so they can say it's finalised and they can't go back on it. So that's happening later in September on the 25th, but today is actually the last day of that bureaucrats from the UK could object to it in Brussels. There's a trade policy committee, an EU trade policy committee that meets regularly in Brussels. It's made up of the bureaucrats, the trade bureaucrats from all 28 member states, and the Trade Commission, who obviously sets the agenda. The Trade Commission doesn't actually have to ask that committee, because the Trade Commission has its mandate to go ahead with CETA. But they will want to clear it with that committee to make sure there's no hiccups down the track. So today is the last meeting of the Trade Policy Committee in Brussels where objections to the finalising of CETA could be brought up. Don't hold your breath on the UK raising objections to CETA, because obviously it's the UK for the City of London that's pushing all this stuff through all the time. But we're making our point, and it was clear this morning that they know we're here. This is just the sort of fuss they don't want. This is just the sort of publicity they don't want about these trade agreements, because they're trying to keep them as secret as possible. So the more we scream and shout about it, the better. And I hope that someone in there does have the guts to come out and speak to us. Yesterday something very significant happened. There's this one little tiny window there's one tiny little window for people in the EU to have some say in the programme of the EU. It's called the European Citizens Initiative, ECI. And there's been, to get that up there, you have to get 1 million signatures from at least 7 member states, with a quota for each member state. No small matter, a lot of work for a lot of people. But a proposal went in for an ECI against TTIP and CETA. If you get that 1 million signatures from at least 7 countries, what you get is not exactly a big birthday present. What you get is a debate in the European Parliament and a response from the Commission. That's all, not much. But people were prepared to go for it as the only means there is in the horrible structure of the EU to try and get some people's voice in there. The proposal has to be accepted by the Commission, and yesterday the Commission refused the proposal for the ECI. So they closed that on some really obscure legal grounds. So the Commission yesterday closed that tiny little window of people's voice into what the EU is banging on about. So why are we worried about CETA? Because it has ISDS in it. There wasn't much attention to CETA for a long time because it was like just Canada, and then when the US-EU free trade agreement came up, people began to make the connection. Why CETA really matters is that it will have the ISDS in it that we have rejected. And US corporations will be able to utilise ISDS and sue European governments like the UK government via CETA using their subsidiaries in Canada. So this is a really important backdoor. It will also, or they probably think, it will also make it very difficult not to have ISDS in TTIP if you've already got it in CETA. But we will make sure that it's not that way. So I'll hand over to someone else now, I think.
Okay, thanks guys for being here. If you could please keep tweeting it. I'll stop it now and then be back shortly. Back soon.